Welcome back to 5-Minute Bible Study. We are moving on from Jesus calming the storm yesterday to Matthew 8:28 to 34. I will read it for you, and then we will talk about it. When he arrived at the other side in the region of Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men coming from the tombs met him. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. "What do you want with us, Son of God?" they shouted. "Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" Some distance from them, a large herd of pigs was feeding. The demons begged Jesus, "If you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs." He said to them, "Go." So they came out and went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and died in the water. Those tending the pigs ran off, went into the town, and reported all of this, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. Then the whole town went out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they pleaded with him to leave their region. So, I found it interesting that the demons were coming out from the area where the tombs were. They were coming out from where death was. And they were so violent that you couldn't walk past them. And I just stop and think about how scary that would be. That would be terrifying. And you'd have to imagine just how violent it is that you couldn't run around or get away. And then they asked Jesus what he wanted, and they called him by name. And I just observed, okay, they knew who Jesus was. They knew who he was. And then it asked if he had come here to torture them before the appointed time. So it sounds to me like they knew Jesus had an appointed time. They knew he had a time, I don't know, to die, to save the world, whatever it is. And so they were asking him, "Are you going to torture us before you go on to save the world? What are you going to do?" But I just more so found it interesting that it seems like they knew about the future appointment with Jesus. Anyways, so then there was a pack of pigs feeding in the vicinity, and they begged Jesus. And I actually like that because they know that they need to do the begging. They knew Jesus was superior to them. He was God over them. They knew they needed to beg. They knew they couldn't stay in this body, that Jesus was going to make them do something. And so they pleaded their case. But that just shows that they knew the authority. They knew their power was below what they were dealing with. And I found that powerful. And they didn't want to die, so they're desperate. And Jesus told them, he said, "Go ahead, do what you asked, go into the pigs." And they obeyed. They did what he said. But they ended up dying anyways because of themselves, because of their violence. The demons died. They killed themselves. The pigs wouldn't have gone into the water if they hadn't gone into them and been so violent and crazy. Anyways, this is the biggest lesson I learned here, was that the pig owners took off and they went to where everyone was and they reported it. And these guys, the whole town came with them. The whole town came back. And it did say, how did it word it? It said they reported all of this, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. So they heard about a healing. Not just the pigs dying, not just the demons killing the pigs. They heard about a miraculous healing of these 2 men. But they came back and they pleaded, just like the demons did. They pleaded and asked Jesus to leave the area. They asked him to go. He had just arrived at the beginning of this story. He had just arrived in this area. And when I read it, I think how sad that they heard this story, but the miracle wasn't enough for them. All they could hear was the scary. All they could hear I guess, was the control that Jesus had or something, and what resulted from it. And they assumed he was bad and scary. They didn't ask to see more. They didn't ask for an explanation. They just asked him to leave. And I wonder what that town missed out on because they asked Jesus to leave before he was finished. What good could have come? Who could have been healed? Who could have been saved if they had asked questions instead of asking him to leave? And we have the same choice in difficult, scary things. We can ask him to leave, or we can stop and ask questions and ask him to help us. Anyways, feel free to like and subscribe.